Check, check, check. Mic check, mic check. Check. Mic good, mic good. Peace, 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 Jadar. My mic good.
Check, check, check.
How my sound is? Is my sound good? Give me a minute, I'm gonna get started. I guess my mic good. Ain't nobody saying that. Give me a thumbs up if my mic sound good. I want to make sure my mic good before I get started. Give me just a second to invite a few people. I would play some music real quick, but y'all just give me a second. Let me share in a few groups and we'll get started. I'll get started. Yeah, just bear with me just 3 minutes. I'll get started. Okay. Y'all bear with me just a second, please. And make sure I share it. Am I still echoing, Brother Jadar? Peace, 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 Scooby, peace, Kevin, peace to Wonder. How my mic is? Is my mic good? Am I still echoing? Because if it's echoing, I'm gonna log out and come back in. I want to make sure I'm clear. So that thumbs up meaning my sound good. Okay, okay. I just want to make sure my sound good before I jump into it. Peace, Sister Ebony. Peace, peace to Wanda. Yeah, we're finna jump into it. Dang, I know I'm done shared this already to the groups. I don't know what I'm doing. All right. All right, we're gonna go ahead and jump into a peace, Brother Ashanti. I'm gonna go on and get started. Those that come in, come in.
Man in the full knowledge of himself is a superb and supreme picture of creation. When man
becomes possessor of the knowledge of himself. He becomes master of his environment and captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. This faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. There is no excuse for the black man.
Raising my team, red, black, and green, queen and king, salute, now scream, I say, bring from another hit, I say, five from a different victory. I'm raising my team, red, black, and green, queen and king, salute, now scream, I say, bring from another hit, I say, five from a different victory, I say.
All right, all right. First, I want to say ETM Hotep. I want to say Dua Duawu, Dua Netcha, Uncle Giles and Neb, Rin E Kofi Paisai, Fatmo Alafie, Fatmo Iwa Pele, Majuba, Egungun, Majuba Ibai, Egungun Kiki, Egungun Madupe. Today's presentation is called Warrior King of Ndongo, Queen Nzinga. This is the second installment of what I call the Congo Week. I did a presentation on Monday, the Portuguese and the Congo, and this is the second installment. Well, I'm still dealing with the Congo area, and I'll do my third installment Friday, which would be the kingdom. The Congo Kingdom. So we'll talk about the kingdoms of the Congo on Friday. But again, today's presentation is called Warrior King of Ndongo, Queen Nzinga. All right, this is peace, Steve. Everybody knows that I'm a new member of the Monster Warrior Clan, and we get and again, Sean Iniaret Calfani coined the phrase "Let's go to war" whenever we get ready to do presentations. So let's throw on the music, the war music, before we get into it. All right, let's go to war. I'm gonna do a Hotep Dina suit. I normally don't do the Hotep Dina suit when I'm on Facebook. I usually do it on my YouTube channel, Kofi Paisa TV. And I was eventually supposed to do the presentation on my channel, but I decided to come on here and do my third installment. On my channel. So I'm gonna do a Hotep Dina suit to the Queen, Winnie Mandela. Everybody know who's Winnie Mandela. She was married to Nelson Mandela. They had 2 children. I think they was married for 38 years. She was a member of the South African anti-apartheid. She was a member of the African National Congress, and she was the face of Nelson Mandela as he done his 26 years in prison. You know, she passed, I think 2 days ago, April the 2nd. So I wanted to do a Hotep Dina suit because she is a queen warrior, and today I'm doing a presentation on a queen warrior. So it's only right to do a Hotep Dina suit to Winnie Mandela. So we have the sesh at the top. We have the transliteration in the middle, and we have the translation at the bottom. The transliteration says, Hotep di Nosut Wusir Neb Jadu Necha A Neb Adu DF Paret Hukmin Koret In Henket Ka Apet Sesh Minket Neb Neferet Wabet Anket Necha Im In Ka In Imaku Ma Koru. And the translation, it reads, an offering in which the king gives Wusir, Lord of Jadu, the great deity, Lord of Obitus, that he may give a voice offering, a calf, fowl, linen, alabaster, and all good and pure things in which a deity lives, to the revered ones, Winnie Mandela, justified or true of voice. May she rest in power. All right, I always have to give a disclaimer before I get started. Peace, Nicholas Scott, Hotep, Senaret, Sean Calfunny, peace, LaPatrick, Daniels, and Noble Anthony D. Hill. All right, I have to give a disclaimer before I get started. I always have to give this. I am not a teacher, but merely a student sharing information. And that information provided is for the educational purpose only. And if you are in doubt, do the research or have it verified by someone qualified. I reserve the right to change the focus of this presentation to shut down, sell, or change the terms or use at my own discretion. All trademarks, designs, rights, copyrights, registers, names, mottos, logos, avatars, the sigmas, and marks used or cited by this website or the properties of their respective owners. I reserve the right to add information as it comes available and or adapt changes or improve information as it comes available in the future. Inputs wanted, changes, additions, deletions are encouraged. Hotep Anku Menu Sa Benu. Peace, brother Rodney. This is my saying. Everybody knows when I get ready to do my presentations, this is a statement that I always make. As I learn, we all learn. I believe in this saying. I believe if we have an understanding about anything or we have information about anything, we should share it and pass it down with the family. I think this is the only way we'll be able to grow. We'll be able to succeed. We'll be able to excel if we pass down information. Here, before I get started in the presentation, the Queen Warrior is Nzinga. I want to play this real quick. Thought it was kind of fly, and then we'll get into the presentation.
Who is this man and why is he so important? Governor, this is what the French call the griot. In African culture, he's called the Jali Kunda, the keeper of the history, the teller of the present, the visionary of the future. This is the next best thing to having Queen Nzinga herself. He will know everything about Queen Nzinga.
I want you to tell me everything you know about Queen Nzinga.
Of Stonehenge. Black love, black power, black excellence, black intelligence is Queen Nzinga's rightful revenge. Queen Nzinga is the living example of acquiescence to ancestral tradition. She is the living legend of all ages, the complete vision. She is the quintessential source of wisdom. Her name has become an African idiom. She is the inspiration we drink from. Yes, she is the perpetual fountain. When she saw the invaders from the top of the heavenly mountain, she laughed at their foolishness. She laughed at their hubris. She laughed at their audacity, but she took note of their tenacity. She plotted the plan from far over. Queen Nzinga is the front tube side to the original Lord and Sister Soldier. She is the Field Marshal General. She rules over all brigadiers and corporals. Nzinga commands bands, all lieutenants and sergeants. They called us slaves, she called them targets. They called themselves Portuguese, she called them targets. They called us human cargo, she called them targets. They called us beasts of burden, she called them targets. They called themselves masters, she called them targets. They called themselves settlers, she called them targets. I hear the gods say Queen Nzinga is greater than the great walls of Zimbabwe, and more mysterious than the alignments of Stonehenge. Black love, black power, black excellence, black intelligence is Queen Nzinga's rightful revenge. Queen Nzinga recruited the stars, the rain, the wind, the clouds. She recruited gravity. She recruited the heat of the sun. She said, free yourself and free your brother, free your sister, free your children. Yes, free up everyone. She recruited elation for her children and recruited separation for the enemies of blackness. She is the immortal black stallion. Queen Nzinga is the mosquito-carrying malaria that wiped out the Urubu battalions. Yes, she is the mosquito that stopped all of Africa from becoming one big South Africa. Nzinga is the mosquito who fought by our side. She stopped the northern spread of apartheid. Nzinga is the great mosquito who decimated all backward armies, settlers, invaders, mercenaries, and missionaries. Missionaries and mercenaries. Nzinga is the first one who recognized that the words mercenaries and missionaries, missionaries and mercenaries sounded hauntingly similar. So she said mercenaries and missionaries must be treated hauntingly similar. Queen Nzinga is the bravery and the Don Kamani. Nzinga is the brilliance of beauty. Nzinga is the genius in Nkrumah. Queen Nzinga is the clarity in Lumumba. Nzinga is the purity in Malcolm. Nzinga is the intellect of Diop. Queen Nzinga is the vision of David Walker. Queen Nzinga is the organization of Marcus. Nzinga is the vengeance, just the vengeance in Makanda. Queen Nzinga is the vengeance, just the vengeance in Gutman. Yes, she is the vengeance, just the vengeance in Desaline. Queen Nzinga is the vengeance, just the vengeance in Gabriel Christ.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of start off with that. I think that was dope, man. You know, how he was dedicating poetry to Queen Nzinga. So let's get into it. All right, peace, Sister Delia, if you still on here, peace, Marcus, Hotep, Edmund. All right, Nzinga. Nzinga was born in Angola, Kia Samba of Gugala Kakumba around 1583. Queen Anne Nzinga was born in the Portuguese settlement of Angola. She was related to Nzinga Mahimbe, who was baptized at Alfonso in 1491. And we talked about Alfonso, whose name is real name is Mbamba, who was baptized in 1491 by the Portuguese, and he took on the Christian name as he converted to Christianity. But then later on, he went back into the indigenous, his indigenous system in Central Africa. By the Portuguese. Nzinga's father was a ruler of Ndongo of Matamba kingdom, which governed the Mbande people. Nzinga also had two sisters, Makumbo, Mbande, and Lady Barbara, and Kifuji, or Lady Grace, and Kufuja Mambidi, also known as Donna Barbara. Hotep Ampu Ma'atra. According to the tradition, she was named Nzinga because her umbilical cord was wrapped around her neck. The Kimbundu verb kinja means to twist or turn. It was said to be an indication that the person who had this characteristic would be a proud and wise, and a wise woman told the mother that Nzinga would become queen one day. Nzinga was greatly favored by her father, who allowed her to witness as he governed his kingdom and who carried her with him to war. So she learned a lot of tactics from following her father. She learned how to operate government through her father. Peace, Tiffany. Mbande people, also Kimbunde, are the largest ethnic groups and one of the most ancient people of Angola. Now, today it is referred as Angola, but the name used to be called the Ndongo. Angola was the Portuguese named that region Angola later on in time, and we'll get to that in the presentation. I think I touched on it in my first installment, Portuguese in the Congo presentation that I did on Monday. This is the second installment, so some of the things that I'm talking about, y'all should be already up to speed on some of these things if you looked at my first presentation. Comprise several subgroups: Linji, Mbondo, Hongu, Pindi, Lebolo, Ndongo, and Imbangala. These are the Mboda people. In 1557, the rulers Ngolo of Ndongo, Ndaba, requested military aid from the Portuguese and to be baptized. In 1560, an embassy that led the Paulo Dias de Boyas arrived, but the new rulers of Ndongo, Kijala, Ki Ndamba, suspected them to be agents in the Congo. So right here, we're talking about in 1557, the ruler Ndabe, he requested military. At this point in time, let me get you up to speed. At this point in time, I talked about in the first installment the Portuguese in the Congo. So I deal with specifically the late around 1483. So I deal with 1483. Now we into 1557. I deal with Nukuwu, which is Juan the First. I deal with Mbamba, who was Alfonso. So we talked about those two kings specifically, and we talked about those explorers, the Portuguese explorer Gallo that came into the Congo River around 1481, and then he encountered the people in the Congo at this point of time, and then he left. Gallo left and went back to Portuguese when he came in 1483, excuse me, and then he shipped back out and he returned back to the Congo area in 1485. But when he left in 1483, when he encountered King Nukuwu, what we call Juan the First, who was the king at first before Alfonso, his son, was the king, he left with Nukuwu's noblemen, and he left in Gao, which is a Portuguese explorer or a Portuguese invader. He left with some of the noblemen, and his men stayed, Gao's men stayed in the Congo area for 2 years. And when Gao came back to the Congo region in 1485, he brought the Nukuru's noblemen back at this point of time, and he brought missionaries and merchants back in 1805. And in not 1805, but in 1485, and then in 1491, Nukuwu converted into Christianity at this point of time. The last presentation I showed you that the missionaries, the Portuguese mission was to go out and explore Africa for its natural resources, specifically gold, copper, and then later on slaves in the Congo for the sugar plantations that they started putting up on the islands. And fifth, so I'm just trying to get y'all up to current events so y'all can kind of be where I'm at. An ambassador led to Paulo Dias Divas arrived, and the new ruler Ndongo, the Kijajo Ki Ndaba, suspected them to be agents of the Congo and had them in prison. So Paulo Dias de Novas. So this individual here, we're going to talk about him a little bit more. I'm going to show a picture of him and we'll talk about him a little bit more. And we talked about his grandfather in my first installment, the Portuguese in the Congo. And we'll get to that in a second. However, allowed Novus return to Portuguese. So in the beginning, the first king in 1557 was requesting military requesting military aid from the Portuguese. And by this time, the Portuguese didn't respond or didn't come in until 1560. And you had Ndongo Kujara Kia Ndaba, who was the king. And as the Portuguese men came in, they imprisoned them. And as he imprisoned this guy, Paulo Diaz, who he eventually let free. He returned to Portuguese under the condition to lead military aid. In 1575, Novus returned with an expedition of 7 ships, 700 settlers, and 350 soldiers in 1576, establishing the Luanda, a new settlement with the consent of the king of Ndongo and the Congo. So when the guy that he imprisoned, he let go, which we talked about his grandfather in the last presentation. He eventually came back, and he came back with 700 settlers, 700 Portuguese, and he came back with 350 soldiers. And the king of the Congo, or the king in the Ndongo, which they call Angola now, he let them establish a settlement called Luanda. So these Portuguese lived in the Congo area that they created their own settlement called Luanda at this time. Paulo Diaz de Novus, this was the individual that came in to talk about talk to the king about the Portuguese, helping them out with the military aid. And then at this point in time, we know that the Portuguese, in my last installment, we talked about how the Gallo came into the Congo River, the head of the Congo River, where the people of Congo encountered this explorer, or this invader. They set up a relationship where they started trading with each other. So they started trading, exchanging. They started giving gold, because we know we talked about the age of discovery. We talked about the Portuguese discovery that birthed the age of discovery. We talked about Prince Henry and so forth. So we know these individuals came in for gold, but they also came in for gold and exploring was also synonymous with Christianity. So their goal was to come in and explore these new places for the natural resources, and also to convert people into Christianity, or to spread Christianity. Because again, I showed on a slide before, time and time through memorial, we have Europeans, missionaries come in and try to convert the kings. And the kings, after they convert the kings, they convert those in the kingdom. So I showed you what the people in the Congo era was practicing. It wasn't Christianity at that form of time until the Portuguese came in, and to solidify their exchange, or their agreement to exchange goods, was they converted to Christianity, and then they took on the names of the European. It's no different than what we're doing today. It's no different than what happened in this time that we in the area is doing via the Atlantic slave trade, the 1400s, going into the 1500s. So we know that they kidnapped our ancestors. They stripped us of our name. They stripped us of our culture. They stripped us of our traditions. They stripped us of our moral. That's why a lot of people walk around here with the name Billy, Bob, Susan, Nelson, Smith, and so forth, because we have taken on the oppressor's name. They strip you a thorough knowledge of yourselves, and then they give you their identity. So this has been going on. So when Diaz came back into the Congo, well, let's talk about him a little bit. And Diaz is the explorer Diaz, who explored into India. So I talked about that Portuguese individual that came in Africa, and then went around Africa and went into explore and went into India. So this is his grandson here. His grandson became the governor. His grandson became the governor of Luanda, which is a settlement that the king set up for the Portuguese. He came back with 700 settlements, and he came back with 350 soldiers to aid the people in the Congo area, to aid the king in the Congo area at this time. Diaz, 1510 to 1589, Fidalgo in the royal household was the Portuguese colonizer of Africa in the 16th century and the first captain governor of Portuguese Angola. He was the grandson of the explorer Bartolomé Diaz. And again, we talked about him in my first installment, The Explorer. If you haven't seen that presentation I did, go back. It's called Portuguese in the Congo. It's on my YouTube channel, Kofi Paisa TV. By 1618, the heirs of Ndamba, the ruler of Matamba, Madandi, who Nzinga was a sister of, revolted against the Portuguese, but were defeated by the forces of governors Luis Mendes Forcos, who attacked the Ndongo capital with the help of the allied Imbangalas, and executed the nobles and the Ndongo dynasty. The Portuguese expected conquerors after the kingdom to pay the tribute to the slaves. So during this time, as the settlers came in, the Portuguese settlers came in. The guy came back, the king of the Congo. He let Diaz set up a settlement in Angola, what is called Angola, but it is called Ndongo, and set up an area. And again, he brought 700 settlements. He's brought 700 Portuguese with him and 300 soldiers to back the Congo up. Now we know that we're going to see through this presentation, which we know if you study history and we understand what the Europeans did to our ancestors, we'll understand when we talk about treaties. Every treaty that they took, every treaty that we agreed upon with the European, they bagged out of it. They did not do what they say they was going to do. So the Portuguese began to war in the Congo area. So as they warred in the Congo area, they had the new governor. This was a new governor. The first governor was Diaz's son, who was the governor who the king let set up a settlement in Ndongo. And after him was this guy, Luis Mendes de Vacolos, if I'm saying his name correctly. Hotep, RDB, Peace, Calvin Johnson. So they started warring with the Congo area, trying to take, again, the natural resources. And again, the slave trade had jumped off. Again, if you go back to my Portuguese and the Congo presentation, you can see they have had an agreement with the Portuguese where they was exchanging the people in the Congo was giving the Portuguese gold, giving them copper. And in exchange, the Portuguese was giving them swords, they was giving them muskets, they was giving them gunpowder, they was giving them mirrors and so forth. They was swapping, they was exchanging. And they was giving them plenty of gold, but the Portuguese wanted more. It wasn't enough. So, and then around this time, they started establishing on the islands, because we know most of the people in the Congo went to Brazil. So they started setting up these, which became a dominance in the slave trade, was the sugar cane. So they started setting up sugar cane plantations on these islands. So they needed bodies to work the islands. So they did not want to exchange goods with the people in the Congo anymore. They wanted bodies in order for the Portuguese to exchange their goods with the people in the Congo. And Alfonso at this time, whose name is Mbabiba, if I'm saying his name rightly, because again, his name was not Alfonso. When he was converted to Christianity, again, when you convert to Christianity, what they did was he had to take on the European name. So they gave him a name. So each one of these kings was named after a European, which we still see today. We are naming our kids after Europeans. We're giving them European names. We are following their tradition. We're still following their traditions. But this guy, he ended up having the Imbangala, which we're going to talk about the Imbangala. This governor at this time, he started seeking out mercenaries. And as I talked about Alfonso, when he was exchanging, and he agreed at this time, when we talk about slaves, I pointed out in the other presentation, we're talking about prisoners of war. So we warred against our own family. And I said this in the last presentation. We fight with our mothers sometimes. We fight with our fathers sometimes. We fight with our sisters. We fight with our cousins. We fight with our neighbors sometimes. We do these things. So again, like I said on the last presentation, I'm not the brother here that's going to superimpose on you that everything in Africa was kumbaya. We all got along. We all fight, because we still see this today. Again, we fight with our mothers sometimes, our fathers, our cousins, our kindreds, our neighbors sometimes. But at this point, when we fought against our kindred, what they call slaves, they was prisoners of war. And on the last presentation, the prisoners of war, who we call slaves at that point of time, those prisoners could earn money. Those prisoners of war, who they call slaves, could own land. Those individuals could marry locals in the society. And those prisoners of war that worked off their debt, they could either integrate in the society or they can go back to where they come from. So there was no such thing as them selling people for free labor, raping the women, double castrating the men, sodomizing the men, beating the men, feeding them slop out of the troughs, and so forth. So when he agreed to let the Portuguese receive bodies for the goods, he thought it was going to be in the same capacity of what their prisoners of war were already worth. And I'm just trying to get y'all up to speed to, if you didn't look at the presentation, so you can kind of follow this presentation here. So hopefully everybody that's on here looked at the Portuguese and the Congo presentation the other day. But I'm just trying to give you a backdrop or get you up to speed to where I'm at now. So when the Imbangala, the governor, these Imbangalas was mercenaries. These were warriors. They was African warriors, but they was African mercenaries. And these individuals, you know, mercenaries they work for hire. Whoever is hiring, that's who they work for. So he became an ally. The Portuguese became an ally with the Imbangala people. And we're going to talk about the Imbangala people. And these people helped come in and help to burn down the region of Ndongo. And these people had to retreat into Matamba, if I'm saying it right, but we're going to get into that. The Portuguese expected Congress African kingdoms to pay their tribute in slaves. The slavery tribute was set up by the Portuguese official Bento Cardoso in 1608, which demanded delivery of slaves to the Portuguese through the Ndongo nobility. This is the governor, Luis Mendes de Vocas. This is the Portuguese I was talking about, who actually hired these mercenaries to help him into taking over Ndongo, what we call the Angola area. He was the king after Bartolomeu Diaz's son, who set up the settlement in Angola or in Ndongo. He was a nobleman who served the colony governor of Angola between 1617 and 1621, and the 50th Grand Master of the Order of the St. John's between 1620 and 1623. He was also a writer. Now, I just told you that he hired these mercenaries, and these mercenaries are these warriors who put you in the mind of the Zulu nation, I'm saying the Zulu nation, but put you in the mind of the Zulus, whose tactics was almost similar to the Zulu warriors. These were mercenaries. They was also warriors, and they come from out of the Congo area too. And he hired these Portuguese hired these guys to help him to invade more into the Congo area, because he wanted more slaves. He wanted more slaves, and he wanted more of the natural resources, and they wanted to take over the Congo Empire, which extend just from the Angola area, went into so many other different areas, which we'll talk about in the Congo Empire presentation, part 3, the third installment, which will be Friday. The Imbangala were fully militarized society based on entirely of initiation rights, as opposed to the customary kingship rights of the most African ethnic groups. To keep kingship from replacing initiation, all children born inside Quilombo were killed. Women were allowed to leave the Quilombo to have their children, but when they returned, the child was not considered a Imbangala until undergoing initiation. In almost Spartan-like programs, children were trained daily and groups of individual combats. During training, they wore a collar which could not remove even after initiation, until they had killed a man in battle. Aside from the infanticide rituals, the Imbangala covered themselves with ointment called maja or samba, believed to confer invulnerabilities as long as the soldier follows strict sets of Yayatya codes. The Yayatya requires the infanticide, cannibalism of an absolute absence of cowardness. So these mercenaries, these warriors that trained up, and these guys was for hire. So these guys went to work for the Portuguese against their own kinsmen for guns, and for other riches that the Portuguese other material that the Portuguese had that they wanted. So they aligned themselves with the Portuguese to raid the kingdoms of the Congo area, to burn down, to destroy, to take people and turn them over to the Portuguese during the slave trade. In 1622, they invited Ndongo King Mbande to attend a peace conference there to end the hostility with the Mambundo. Mbande sent his sister. Mbande is Nzinga's brother, and at this time he is at the throne. His father has passed, and his son Mbande is over the throne. He is the one that revolted. He actually revolted against the Portuguese after his father. His father allowed the Portuguese to come in, right? He allowed Diaz's godson to come in to be a governor and set up his own settlement called Luanda, if I'm saying it correctly. And he brought in 700 Portuguese and 350 military, and he rebelled against them. And then the Portuguese aligned themselves with the Imbangala, came back and attacked the Congo to try to get more slaves and rape the Congo of its natural resources. This went on for a few years, and then in Nzinga, she was skilled. She went to war when her father went to war, so she seen things and studied from her father and from her brother Mbande, and she understood politics and so forth, watching her father. So at this time, they want to try to set up a peace treaty against the Portuguese, who have come in and pushed them into Kongo, which is another region outside of Ndongo at this point of time. So after the governor died, you have another governor that comes into the settlement that her father let Diaz's grandson start, and then you had this other individual that aligned himself with the Imbangala, and then after him you had another governor said, okay, we can set up this peace treaty. So he invites his sister Nzinga, you know what I'm saying, to the meeting in Behead. So it says in 1622 they invited the Ndongo King Mbande to attend the peace conference there to end the hostility with Mbande. Mbande sent his sister Nzinga to represent him in a meeting with the Portuguese governor Juan Coro de Sousa. So this is the third governor in this settlement. Nzinga was aware of her diplomatic awkward position. She knew of an event in the Congo which had led to the Portuguese domination of the numerous independent nation. She also recognized, however, that they refused to trade with the Portuguese would remove a potential ally and a major source of guns for her own state. In the first of the series of the meetings, Nzinga sought to establish her equality with the representation of the Portugal crown, noting that the only chair in the room belongs to the governor Gorilla, and she was refused a seat. So she immediately motioned to one of her assistants, who fell on her hands and knees and served as a chair for Nzinga for the rest of the meeting. And this here is on the side. You can see this is a drawing, a contemporary illustration drawn by the Italian priest Gino Antonio Gavias Diaz Motulos of Queen Nzinga. And this individual, he was in this area, this priest. Again, the Portuguese will bring in these Jewish sites. These Jewish sites was these priests. These priests are the Jewish, of the Jesus order of the Catholic Church. So we know that the exploring, the Portuguese or the Europeans coming in to explore for gold and natural resources and for human body to facilitate their plan, facilitate their plantations, they brung in these missionaries to convert the people in the area that they was going to. So their mission was to explore and to establish and spread Christianity. Because again, prior to the European coming into Africa, we didn't know a darn thing about Christianity. And again, this priest, he also was the individual that was there, that he did this he did some writings, which we'll talk about him in other installments, them their accounts of being these missionaries, their account for being in the Congo at this period of time. And this is an illustration that he drew and telling the story of Nzinga. She was there on behalf of her brother to negotiate the terms of the peace treaty, and the governor would not give her a chair. So she summons for her assistant, and her assistant fell to her knees. Some say it was a male, some say it was a female. Fell to her or his knees to sit down so she can be on an equal plane with this Portuguese governor in this area to work out this peace treaty. Despite that displays, Nzinga made accommodation with the Portuguese. She converted to Christianity. And again, you just gonna keep seeing this. Every time these invaders come in and we are trying to get help from these individuals, or we trying to have peace with these individuals, we convert to their we convert to their religion in order for us to get along. And we give up our own spiritual systems, because the missionaries that come in tell us that our way of life is not right and their way of life is right. So we have to convert to their systems. So we have to give up our indigenous systems, and we have to give up our names. Because in the last presentations, you've seen Nukumu give up his name to one the first. You see his son Imbangala give up his name, and he become Alfonso, named after these Europeans. So here you see Nzinga, in order to make this treaty solid, she converted into Christianity to seal this peace treaty, and she adopted the name Donna Ana de Sousa. So she giving up her indigenous system and her name just to please these Europeans, so they can have peace and exchange goods and knowledge amongst each other. She was baptized in honor, and so you can see here in Nzinga. I got this out of one of the Harvard books. I can't think of it, but I have it at the source at the end. But you can see what they're drawing here, Nzinga here, and you can see the individual, the priest here is baptizing Nzinga into Christianity, and she has become Donna Ana de Sousa. She was baptized in honor of the governor's wife, who also became her godmother. Shortly after, Nzinga urged and reluctantly Angola Mbande to order the conversion of his people to Christianity. So there you go, seeing that. Again, the missionaries are always coming in. And the first thing that they do before they bring in the guns, they bring the missionaries in. And they try to get the missionaries to convert the kings or the queens. And once they do that, then they convert the whole kingdom into Christianity. Nzinga converted to strengthen the peace treaty with the Portuguese. And the same way that Nukumu, which was the king of the Congo, this is before pre-Nzinga, which Nzinga is also a kinsman of Nukumu and Mbaba, who is Alfonso, who we talked about more in my first installment, the Portuguese in the Congo. So she is a kinsman of them, and her kinsman converted. Her one the first, who was Nukumu, converted, but then 3 years later, after he was baptized in 1491, to Sir Philip to seal his agreement with the Portuguese in exchanging goods with each other, he converted to Christianity. But at that point, he gave his people an option. They can either convert to Christianity, or they can continue to practice their own indigenous systems. And then 3 years later, he gave up Christianity and went back to his indigenous spiritual system. And then his son later took the throne. He began to become strong in the faith of Christianity. So he was baptized into Christianity, and his name was changed to Alfonso. And his mission was to convert everyone in the kingdom. So he outlawed the indigenous system, which I showed in the last presentation. Portuguese, they were not Christians in the Central African region. So she doing the same thing. The Portuguese never honored the treaties, and despite the allegiance with the Portuguese, they continued to raid her kingdom, taking slaves and precious items in the process. And like I said earlier, peace, James Miller, peace, Jehudi Asar Ra. As I said earlier, as you continue to study history, and you can see not only the Portuguese, the Spain, French, the Dutch, the Englishmen, and so forth that came in to our area, to these invaders that came in on a mission to convert us into Christianity and to steal the natural resources and to enslave our ancestors for free labor. Every treaty that we had with them, they broke. Neither withdrawing Mbakawas nor returning the subjects who they held were slave captures in war. And this here where she talk about neither withdrawing from Mbaka nor returning the subjects who they held were slaves captured. Now, during the agreement that Nzinga had, that her brother had her at this time, Nzinga was not on the throne of Ndongo Matamba at this point of time, or over the whole province of the Kongo kingdom at this kingdom at this time. Her brother was still at this point of time. She came in to negotiate the terms with the Portuguese, with the new governor that was in the settlement that her father had. Martha was Diaz's son to come in with the 700 Portuguese and the 350 military men that come in. And again, as I explained, they attacked Ndongo, and the new governor had the Imbangala, who was African warriors and African mercenaries, who was up for hiring, because these guys was already pillaging places anywhere, because they was outside of the societies anyway. So these warriors trained. So they showed you how they trained and they did certain things, and then they was already coming and ransacking societies anyway, taking things that had nothing, taking belongings that they didn't even own. So the governor liked it what the Imbangala was doing. These African warrior mercenaries hired them, and they came back in and they started burning stuff to the ground and started taking individuals to sell to the Portuguese for these muskets, these gunpowders, and these precious items from the Portuguese that the Portuguese was giving them. But during the agreement that Nzinga had on behalf of her brother that she worked out with the new governor, the Portuguese, doing this agreement, he said he would withdraw the military factory and the Imbangala warriors, these African warrior mercenaries, out of Ndongo, and they can return back into Ndongo, and they was going to return the slaves that they illegally captured. And I'm saying illegally because if you go back and if you're following me from the last presentation, Portuguese in the Congo presentation that I did, Alfonso, whose name is Mbamba, who converted to Christianity, and they gave him the name King Alfonso, after he exchanged goods with these individuals and converted into Christianity, he began to, the Portuguese wanted bodies. They said, no, we don't want your goods. We don't want your gold. We don't want your copper. We don't want your salt. We don't want your ivory. We don't want none of these things. We want bodies. So Mbamba, or King Alfonso, did not want to give his prisoners of war to the Portuguese. But on his behalf, he was thinking about the betterment of the kingdom. He wanted their knowledge he wanted their new technology, so forth as the gunpowder and the guns. this new technology that was coming in. Also, he wanted some of those items that he was already exchanging other things with, but they no longer wanted the items that they had. They wanted bodies. And he was under the conception that the Portuguese was going to treat his enemies or the criminals that was in the Congo or the people he warred with, his kinsmen that he warred with that became prisoners of war. He thought they was going to be treated the same, where they was going to be able to work for money. They was going to be able to own land, and they was going to be able to marry if they wanted to marry locals in their region. And at one period, they will be freed and they will not be mistreated. But he later on found out they was using them on the islands and was treated horrible on these sugarcane plantations. But anyway, he was supposed to return anyway. But during that period, the kingdom, the king and his magistrate, they was the ones who picked out who they was going to get a Portuguese to. And during the time after Alfonso and so forth into her father and her brother Mbande, they were still over who they was going to choose to give to the Portuguese. But when the Portuguese illegally or came in and attacked the Congo area and started burning things down and taking the natural resources and the people, the Imbangalas, and selling them to the Portuguese, it was illegal because it was supposed to be done. But at this point in time, they agreed to return the illegals, people that they kidnapped. This was the agreement. We was going to let bygones be bygones. The stipulation was she wanted them to return them slaves that was captured in war, because again, she thought they was prisoners of war. And again, we get prisoners of war misconstrued with what slaves is today, as they were unable to restrain the Imbangala. Despite the display, Nzinga made accommodation with the Portuguese. She converted to Christianity as adopted the name Dona Ana de Sousa, which I said in the last slide. She was baptized in honor of the governor's wife, who also became her godmother. Shortly afterward, did I go back? I'm sorry, I went back to the same, what's the name? Peace, Hotel. I'm in my Outright Peace, Matt. All right. Nzinga returned to Cabaz, and not too long after he arrived, Mbandada committed suicide. So as I stated earlier in a slide, she, Nzinga, the warrior king, she was not the queen of the whole kingdom of the Congo yet. Her brother was Mbandada. Mbandada was the king. And through the warring and him rebelling against the Portuguese and the Portuguese coming back and attacking, he lost a lot of things and he lost a lot of his people. And through the negotiation of him sending his sister Nzinga to negotiate and treaty with them, and they rebelled against it, it was too much for her brother, and her brother committed suicide. Now, as she returned and her brother committed suicide, she found out her brother committed suicide. And the Portuguese started, which they still doing to us today, which if you look on the TV stations, if you look in the newspapers, if you look in your mailbox, there is always propaganda about our people. You know, so at this point in time, the Portuguese was pushing propaganda saying that Nzinga killed her brother. So the Portuguese was spreading this lie so that the people in the Congo would not accept her as the rightful heir to the throne. So they started spreading lies and saying that Queen Nzinga brother did not commit suicide. She killed him for the throne. Without a leader, the Portuguese attacked Kambasa and burning it to the ground. Nzinga fled to the mountains with her people, and over the next few years organized an army to fight back. It was at this moment in history that Nzinga led her people to take control of their territory. In 1624, this was 2 years later, at the age of 42, this was 2 years later, after she went in 1622, her brother had her to come in to negotiate a peace treaty against the governor in the settlement of Ndongo, what we call Angola today. And she was pushed after her brother committed suicide. There was no leader, and it was confusion going on because the Portuguese was lying, telling these lies and confusing the people that Nzinga killed her brother for the throne. So her people at this time, before she became the queen, they was pushed out of pushed out by the Portuguese into another area of the kingdom. There was many provinces, which we're going to talk about those many provinces, the kingdom. We're going to talk about this big kingdom in the Congo. We're going to talk about all those areas in my third installment. In 1624, at the age of 42, Nzinga was declared Ngola Kuyaya, ruler of Mbande of Ndongo. So now, in 2 years later, she ascended to the throne. She was now the queen. Nzinga's aim was to drive the Portuguese out of the Ndongo area, Ndongo, and break their monopoly on the slave trade, because she was against the slave trades and the Portuguese taking over her homeland. And you can see here, Queen Nzinga here is giving them the business here, giving the Portuguese the business. At this moment, the kingdom was under attack from both the Portuguese and the neighboring aggressors. So the neighboring aggressors were the Imbangala. And I might do a presentation on those guys, because me doing some research on them, because I only just gave a picture of them and a few little information about these individuals. But these guys was interesting. You know what I'm saying? These guys was very interesting. So I may do a presentation, you know, on them as well. I only just gave you a brief information on them, but we can see that these guys needed their heads cut off too, because they went against their own kinsmen to help these Portuguese enslave more Africans in the Congo area. Peace, Tasha. Nzinga realized that to remain viable in Ndongo, in Ndongo is Angola today, which is in Central Africa, and in Ndongo is a province of the Congo Empire, had to reposition itself as a military rather than a supply zone in the slave trade. To achieve this, she allied Ndongo with the Portuguese stimulus, acquiring a partner in the fights against the African enemies and ending the Portuguese slave raidings in the kingdom. To secure peace for her people, Nzinga paid the Portuguese taxes of slaves and ivory. So now Nzinga has been fighting against the Portuguese for too long now. We're going to see how long she started fighting. So again, she's going back to the Portuguese to try to hash out the differences and set up another peace treaty against these Portuguese in the area. By 1626, however, the Portuguese had betrayed Ndongo of Nzinga, was forced to flee with her people further west, where they found a new state at Matamba, well beyond the reach of the Portuguese. So you can see, every time we set up a peace treaty with the Europeans, they will not honor these treaties. And it's just not in the Congo area. Everywhere that you look that treaties were set up, they broke the treaties. They did not honor those treaties. And she went back the second time. The first time she went in behalf of her brother to negotiate the peace treaty for the Congo area for her brother, who was the heir of the kingdom at this point of time. And they broke the treaty, and eventually her brother committed suicide, and the Portuguese started spreading propaganda that Queen Nzinga did it so she would be the heir to the throne. She was pushed out, and her people was pushed out because there was no leader declared because of the lies. So she fought and fought. She went into another area, and I think it was called Kikondo, and she went into Kikondo, and she went there and she trained, because she was specialized in military tactics. So because she was there as a little child, she was favored by her father, remember? And she went, when her father went to war, Nzinga went to war with her father. She learned how her father governed the kingdoms. She understood politics and so forth. That's why her brother sent her, because she was skilled in these things at an early age. So he sent her in to negotiate in behalf of her. And then later she was pushed. They was pushed out, and then she was pushed into the Congo. She got her military game up. She went back to fight for what's hers, because she was against the slave trade and against them in the area of raping them of the natural resources and trying to take over the whole entire Congo kingdom. And then she went in to try to patch things up again, and they broke the treaty again. And this time she was pushed further into Matamba, which was another province of the Congo kingdom. And here is a map where you can see the Congo. Then you see where this area where it has original kingdom of Nzinga. This was Ndongo, which we call Angola today, and she was pushed farther into Matamba, which we're going to talk about these kingdoms in my third installment, which will be Friday, which will be the kingdoms of the Congo. And then after I get through, you can go back and watch them in reverse. I refer you watch the kingdom in the Congo first, and then you watch the Portuguese in the Congo, and then you watch the Nzinga warrior, because all of these presentations are tied in together. That's why I call it the Congo week, because the 3 presentations I'm doing is specifically on the Congo and the Portuguese and the slave trade and so forth. In 1626, Nzinga became queen of Mbande when her brother committed suicide in the face of the rising Portuguese demanding for slave trades consists. Nzinga, however, refused to allow them to control her nation. Lies was also afoot that Nzinga had actually poisoned her brother, and these lies was repeated by the Portuguese as grounds for not honoring her rights to succeed her brother, and propaganda, which I stated a while ago. Nzinga assumed control as the regent of her young son, Kaza, who was then residing with the Imbangala. So she took over the region, which was Matamba, which her son was over at this point of time. And he was a traitor. What happened was he aligned himself with the Imbangala, and the Imbangala was African warrior mercenaries. These people was up for hire. They was already causing chaos and havoc in the Congo area anyway, because they was coming in and taking stuff and murdering people and so forth. And again, like I said, their warrior style put you in the mind of the Zulu warriors. And the Zulu warriors, they kind of used the same type of tactics and the same type of formation when they got ready to attack villages or they got ready to go to war against people. That's why I say I may do something on the Imbangala, which these individuals gonna make you mad, and they are, again, they are brethren in the Congo region. They are out of the Congo, in the Congo area somewhere, that these individuals, they was just for themselves. They was just wanted to rape, pillage. So so it was only right for them to work with the Portuguese, because that's what they were doing. We know the European, that's what the European do. He rape, he steals, he kill, he pillages. And this is what these African mercenaries warriors was doing, the Imbangalas was doing. And her son aligned herself with the Imbangalas, and which were the enemies, because these warriors helped this governor and the Portuguese military to attack the Congo area and to take over in Ndongo and to capture slaves and depopulate the kingdom of the Congo. I'm glad you are speaking of treaties and how Europeans don't honor them, especially during the colonial period. The European treaties were used to entrap African people and give them false. That's a fact. And you can see this all throughout the presentation. And when you go back and look at my first installment, Portuguese in the Congo, same thing, just was breaking treaties all the way around the board. All right. The son returned, whom she alleged to have killed for his impunity. She then assumed the power of ruling of Ndongo. Now, this was an accusation. We don't know for sure if she killed her son. for aligning himself with the Imbangala. In 1641, the Dutch worked in alliance with the Kingdom of the Congo, sieging Luanda. Now, Luanda, just going back for those that may have come in, Luanda is a region in Angola or in Ndongo. That was the name Ndongo, and the Portuguese changed it to Angola. So if you look on the map now, you will see Angola, but it's Ndongo. And I'm going to talk about the proper names that the regions were that eventually became Angola, which eventually became Cabina, which eventually became the Democratic of the Congo, which became the Republican of the Congo, and so forth. Those names that are known by now. But I'm going to give you the digital name, but I'm going to give you all the provinces and all the kingdoms, because the Congo region was, when we talk about a big, massive empire, they had a big, massive empire, and they was doing great things before Portuguese invading them. Before Gallo came in 1481, they already had a master king. So I must go in depth of how the kingdom got started, the alliances that the people married and these people merged together. I'm going to reiterate who the people in the Congo are. For those that looked at the presentation, you will know those people came, the people that was in Central Africa that we call the Congo region was the people that they called the Pygmies, or the Mbabutus, that the archaeologists called the Pygmy people. They was there, they say, 40,000 years ago. And then in 500 BCE, you had the people from West Africa that migrated from West Africa into Central Africa. And then you had people later on from East Africa begin to migrate into Central Africa with those that was with the people that migrated from West Africa into Central Africa as well. And those people began to entangle, began to copulate, have children, and create other ethnic groups, and small other societies began to merge together, and they began to become one group of people. And this is how you get the Congo area. But I'll talk a little bit more about that and the kingdom of the Congo. We're going to talk about the first king and the king in the Congo and so forth. But back to what I was saying. So the Dutch was coming in at this time, and the Dutch was an enemy to the Portuguese at this time. The Dutch and the French was an enemy to the Portuguese at this time when we're talking about the slave trade, because they in competition with each other and so forth. So what Queen Nzinga did was she aligned herself, she allegiance her kingdom with the Dutch to try to push and siege Luanda. And Luanda was a settlement that her father, remember in the slide that I showed, her father was the one where prior to her father, the king before her father wanted military assistance from the Portuguese. And 2 years later, the Portuguese sung in Barthelemy Dias' son, which we talked about, Barthelemy Dias, who was an explorer during the age of discovery and so forth. We talked about them. Pork cheese, bro. I don't piece of Tommy Willer Jr. I'm not understanding what you're saying. Pork cheese, bro. Anyway, he wanted a military Portuguese to come in and help them. He wanted the military from the Portuguese. 2 years later, he died. Her Queen Nzinga father took over. And when the guy came in to negotiate, Barthelemy Dias' grandson, he imprisoned him and then let him free. And he eventually came back. He came back a few years later. He came back with 700 Portuguese and 350 military. At this time, he thought the other king was still on the throne, but Nzinga was on the throne. But then he let him leave. He came back, and when he came back, her father let him set up a settlement called Luanda. And once she set that settlement up, that's when stuff started going to war. You done let these people in the Congo region, and more into the Congo region, and now these people are starting to attack the Congo, starting to go against what was already set prior Nukuwu and prior Mabubu, which we know as Alfonso, who we talked about in the last presentation. So Nzinga soon set them to Mbasa to conclude an alliance with them against the Portuguese, who continued to occupy the inland empire of their colonies of males, and their main headquarters at the town of Masangano, hoping to recover the lost lands with the Dutch help. She moved her capital to Kambaga in the northern part of the Ndongo, former domain. In 1644, she defeated the Portuguese army at Ngolumo, Kambaga, and she defeated them, in 1646 with the help of the Dutch. And Nzinga was again forced to retreat back to Matamba, and which was 2 years later. This was 1646. She reclaimed Ndongo, and then 1648, 2 years later, she wasn't able to hold on to the throne because the Portuguese came back and attacked, and she was pushed back out into Matamba. And from this point, Nzinga focused on developing Matamba as trading power, capitalizing on its, on its position as a gateway to Central Africa interior. The Dutch, and excuse the typo here, I thought I fixed this, but apparently I didn't. The Dutch of Luanda now sent Nzinga reinforcements, and with their help, Nzinga routed the Portuguese army in 1647 at the Battle of Coamba. Nzinga then led the siege of the Portuguese presidios of Acamba, Maximus, and their capital, Mazagano, lacking artillery. The attack was unsuccessful in dislodging the Portuguese. Peace, Sister Sophie. In 1657, hold on, go back. In 1657, the Portuguese, having a long and difficult struggle with Nzinga, requested a new peace treaty. So this is now they're talking about another peace treaty. We know that this is going to be the third peace treaty. They have already broke 2 peace treaties, but at this is now we at 1657. And we know that Nzinga at this point has been fighting with the Portuguese, trying to fight the battle of the slave trade in the Congo, and them raping the natural resources and obtaining her land and destroying the kingdoms. She has been fighting with the Portuguese for 40 years. And the Portuguese having a long, and this was their most difficult battle that they have ever had, was with Queen Nzinga. And having a long and difficult struggle with Nzinga, requested a new peace treaty. This is the third one. The church reaccepted Nzinga in 1656. She converted. Hold on. All right, I'm seeing something about that had something to do with me. But in 16, so she's been fighting for 40 years. She's been fighting against the Portuguese for 40 years. And the Portuguese, having a long and difficult struggle with Nzinga, requested a new peace treaty. The church reaccepted Nzinga in 1656, because we know that in 1622, to seal the first peace treaty, she converted to Christianity, and she changed her name to Anna. And we know this prior my last presentation, where the Portuguese mission was during the Portuguese discovery, and the age of discovery was to explore lands for gold, because Prince Henry the Navigator was infatuated by Africa, and the Portuguese was exploring for gold and other natural resources. And then later on, they wanted bodies, they wanted slaves for their new plantations on the islands, the sugarcane plantations. So we can see that they converted, but during this time of them exploring, their mission was to explore for the natural resources, but also to spread Christianity. Converted against Catholicism in 1657, along with Capuchins, she promoted churches in her kingdom. After the wars with the Portuguese ended, she attempted to rebuild her nation, which had been seriously damaged by years of conflict over farming. So again, she had been fighting against the Portuguese for over 40 years. And she went through 2 peace treaties, and then the Portuguese came back with the 3rd peace treaty. And they broke the first 2, and they eventually, you will see they're going to break another peace treaty later on in time. And King Nzinga is connected to my first presentation, Portuguese in the Congo, because it's not too long after King Mabumbu, who converted to Christianity, and they changed his name to Alfonso. She is a kinsman of him. And so all of this is tied in together. So she fought for 40 years to regain the kingdom of the Congo, especially in Ndongo, which was the capital at that point of time. And she fought with conflict for them for 40 years. So she gave them battles after battle after battle after battle with the Portuguese. Today, she is remembered in Angola, which is the name was Ndongo, for her political and diplomatical acumen, as well as her brilliant military tactics. The Portuguese came to respect her military, however, her shrewdness, strength, and intensity. The major streets of Luanda is named after her, and a statue of her was placed in the Kongo on the impressive square in 2002, dedicated by the President Santos to celebrate the 27th anniversary of the independence. Angolian women are often married near the statue, especially on Thursdays and Fridays. The National Reserve Banks of Angola, BNA, issued a series of coins in tribute to Nzinga in recognition of her role to defend self-determination and cultural identity of her people. So here is the statue that was in Luanda. And again, Luanda was a settlement set up by the Portuguese, which was set up by Barthelmemus Diaz's grandson, who became the governor of Luanda, who her father gave permission to set the settlement up when he came back with the 700 Portuguese and the 350 Portuguese military men set up this place in Angola called Luanda. Here is a lit picture I thought was cool, a drawing of Nzinga, African great daughter, Queen Nzinga of Ndongo, leading her troops against the Portuguese armies against which she fought for 40 years. And again, like I said, she fought against the Portuguese for 40 years. She did not give up. She was a true warrior in the sense. She never gave up. She was fighting for what was right for her people. Warrior Queen, Queen Nzinga. And this is just a drawing of Queen Nzinga. Naga Saki Dila Najiga. Now they spoke what they call Ki Babunde, and the people, the Kim Babunde, and the people was called Ki Babunde or the Mbabunde. This was the tribe that Nzinga come from, the Mbabunde. And Naga Saki Dala just only means we giving reference, or we grateful, or we thanking Nzinga, which in the Kimbundu language, Nzinga name is spelled Njinga, and the J is soft. So that's why I spelled it in the language that they spoke in that era. Speak yours. What is this garbage? We ain't from Africa. That's why you're struggling. Oh my goodness, man. We got another guy. So where we from, my brother? Where we from? You know, I'm not the type of individual that you know, that's gonna go back and forth, but I mean, we can not back and forth. We can get in a hangout or something, man, and we can have a build or something, man, because y'all is killing me, man, with this we ain't from Africa stuff, man. It's so much information out here, man. I mean, so much information out here, and y'all still on this stuff that we from America, man. Here are my references, but You can inbox me, my brother Michael Jones. If you still on here, you can inbox me, brother. We can get in a hangout, man. I don't mind when I get off here, bro. We can go directly into a Google Hangout. I'll send you, if you agree, I'll send you the link. We can go on the link, and bro, we can have a bill. Let the information speak for itself. But here's my references right here. You can scrutinize my references if you want to go through them or whatever. Please subscribe to Kofi Paisa TV, the channel that takes the black man, black woman, and black child Eurocentric mind and Africanizes. So please subscribe to my channel. Again, I am a member of the Seshu Ma'ani Meta Nature. So please subscribe to the Seshu Ma'ani Meta Netter YouTube channel. I'm also a member of the Masi Warrior Clan. So please subscribe to the Masi Warrior Clan YouTube channel as well. There's plenty of content on my channel, as well as the group that I in, the Seshu, as well as the other group, the Masi Warrior Clan. So please check us out. Sad, go to class with 2 coffee. It's sad, bro. Oh, and on that note, man, I appreciate y'all, man. Be looking forward for my 3rd installment on Friday. It's called The Kingdoms of the Congo, and we're going to be talking about the that's right, West African baby. But we'll be talking about the Congo Kingdom. But Mike Jones, if you still on here, brother, inbox me now. You know, you come on my chat. I don't come on your chat. I don't go on y'all little groups with these little things about we indigenous to America and we the real Indians and we the Omex and all this other stuff. I don't go on y'all page with that. I don't come on there. I see it and I go on. I don't go on there, but you come on my feed with that. So again, if you want to have a bill with me, bro, don't come back on my feed with that. If you want to have a bill, inbox me and I'll send you a link to a Google Hangout and we can get it in. But and that's why I always say Fatmu Alafie. That means bring forth peace. Fatmu Alafie. So on my chats or when I'm doing my presentations and you're gonna be in my chat, I want peace. Bring forth peace. That's why we always say ETM Hotep, come in peace. A Fatmu Alafie. Bring forth peace. We not with none of the isfat. That's chaos. We not with that. We not with Iwa Babubu, which is bad character. We ain't with that over here. We African over here. Now you go somewhere else with that bad character, American. They got me all out of character. But well, he got me all out of character. But anyway, I appreciate y'all. I hope y'all enjoyed the Warrior King or Ndongo. I hope it was full of information. I reiterated some things that I did on my Portuguese in the Congo presentation. If you hadn't checked that presentation out, go to my channel, Kofi Paisa TV. It's up on my channel. You can check that presentation out. If you missed some of the information on this, you can go back to this now, or you can wait. I'm finna put it up on my on my YouTube channel as I logged out of here. Again, I want to say Shemim Hotep. Shemim Hotep means depart in peace. And catch y'all on Friday with the last installment. Shemim Hotep.
Man in the full knowledge of himself is a superb and supreme creature of creation. When man becomes possessor of the knowledge of himself, he becomes master of his environment and captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. This faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. So there is no excuse for the black man.
Bridging my team, red, black, and green, queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should, bring forth another hit, I should, five for a different victory. I'm ripping my team, red, black, and green, queens and kings, salute, now scream, I should, bring forth another hit, I should, five for a different victory.